So I'm in southern Mexico and I'm in a restaurant and these three older dudes are sitting at a table and another older dude comes in and one of the older dudes looks at him and he calls him by his name, but it's a special way he does it. He says, Don Juan, Don, Mr., but it's a term of endearment, of recognition of someone's age. You've earned it. In Spanish we say anciano, right? You know what I'm talking about? You call them Don as well, but they're older people, okay? Very interesting. So in this city that's up north, there's this fellow named Miguel, and he's Mexican, he's been involved up north, he's here legally, he's opened a restaurant, he's on a school board, and he's got this restaurant, and I've gone in there and eaten all the time, and he's younger than I am, so I always say, Miguel, ¿cómo estamos? Michael, how we doing? Well, I've seen this in southern Mexico, so I come back to the States, and I walk into the restaurant, and it's just open, so there's no one in there. The cooks are just starting to get food ready, and one part of it has got booths, and they have a kitchen here, and Miguel is sitting at the back booth, and I walk in, and he sees me, and he does this, you know, the Mexican greeting. And I said, Don Miguel, ¿cómo estamos? Now, I don't owe him Don anything. He says, please sit down. And it changed our entire relationship. Respecting him. Honoring him. This is a businessman who's successful. He's earned the right to be respected. That's what Confucius is talking about when he talks about hierarchy. Now, it grates us a little bit, husbands over wives. I get all of that. I'm not saying we should endorse it. But I am saying that honor in a relationship carries weight. It's not necessarily even deferring, it's honor. I don't know how to quite put honoring into words. It's recognizing a value in the relationship. At one point, let me finish a little more then. At one point, Keanu Reeves has learned the martial arts by these bizarre people in this forest of trees. and the leader goes to get him because he figures he could be useful to him, and he realizes the skill and the art that Keanu Reeves possesses. So they escape from the pirates. Keanu Reeves has been sold to the pirates, and they escape. And I'm going to call him Oishi. I think that was his name. And Keanu Reeves has been there for a year, and he's in rags, and Oishi's brought clothes with him. So he takes the clothes off the horse, and he does this. And Keanu steps back and just looks at him. And then this is the head of the samurai. Very interesting. He looks at him, and he takes the clothes like this, and he presents them to him. He now recognizes that this man is an equal to him, and he needs to show him respect. Everybody follow that? Okay, so that's what he's talking about. There's a relationship that when we all buy into it, it has the value of order. I mean, you do that with me too. Every once in a while I hear someone on a quad say, "Hey, Poller!" Oh, well, works for me, Bubba. But I notice most of you, when you address me, it's either professor or yes, sir, or no, sir. I notice that. I notice that right away. I notice it, I'm not stepping on toes, I notice it more in the South than I do anywhere else. I've been all over the country. I've been in 17 countries in the world. It's not something we require, but I notice it's something that's a part of culture. And it is a sign of respect. It's the way that we interact and we respect one another. I remember my last year in undergraduate school, I finally called my professor by his first name. He's from India. His name is Ashok Malhotra. And I had always called him Professor Malhotra. I don't know what went through my mind my last semester. I said, Ashok, and he goes, "I've been waiting for you to call me that ever since you were my student." I'd been a student with him for 3 years, and I thought, wow. Suddenly we're on the same footing. He saw me as a colleague suddenly. Did everybody understand what I'm trying to say to you? Okay, so just so you understand what he's talking about, because it's going to get a little bit odd for us. Just a few more minutes of this, and then we'll be done.
You know, but and I agree with that. And I think as I was working on this chapter, I did find myself, you know, rebelling against that and sort of listening to the Taoist, you know, critics who are going to emerge of this tradition. But at the same time, there's something really quite beautiful, not only for me about the emphasis on learning that you see with Confucius, but also about, you know, the critique of narcissism. I mean, our Western civilization has really so much become about the self and about the ego. And here's a tradition that says, you can't be human by yourself. Which, as soon as you hear that, you know it's true, right? I mean, we're all human in relationship, we're all human in community. And this is a tradition that says we have to think about community. We need to be communitarian. And we need that for our ethics to show virtues of human beings in community, rather than just people running off and doing their own thing. That isn't a way to have social order, but neither is it a way for us to flourish as individuals.
Okay, so there's more that's interesting in that. If you get the inclination, it's 20 minutes. I don't want to show you the whole thing, but it sets the stage for what I want to say. So this is nuts and bolts now. Confucianism is humanistic, social, philosophy, or religion. It's about how we behave with one another in what he calls community. The philosophical word is communitarian, that we are a village. We hear that every once in a while in our politics, that we are a village. Humanistic, his concern is to cultivate human qualities in the human spirit, and it's social, his concern for achieving a good social order. So you're going to see 4 things that you're going to see on your quiz. You have to know what these mean, people. Not that I would ever think of taking something from here and putting it here and seeing if you know what goes where. So you have to know what they mean. The first one and most important one is called Ren. It can be translated as benevolence. Benevolence is doing good things that benefit other people. It can be empathy, that we feel things. Back in the 60s, one of the empathic posters that used to go up is one cries and the other tastes salt. There's that empathic connection between people. Or it can be love. In the Greek word phileo, love. We have love and affection for one another. It's not sexual. It's just, it's an involvement that we have with one another. It is the most important quality a human being can possess. Now, they're going to use the word man in the teaching because it was patriarchally centered, but it's the same thing for males and females. Goodness, humanity, benevolence, and human-heartedness, something we become by cultivating our aesthetic, moral, rational, and spiritual sensibilities. So you're not born with benevolence. You learn to be benevolent to one another. Professor, I ran out of time. Is there any way you can give me more time on my quiz? If I say yes, that's an act of benevolence. Sometimes saying no is an act of benevolence too. It's called tough love. But it is an act of benevolence. It's not meant to be rude or hard or demeaning or exclusionary, but it is part of the social structure. It's closely related to the concept of reciprocity, the golden rule, do to others the way you would have them do to you. By the way, the rule literally says, as you want others to treat you, so you treat them first. You don't reap anything you don't sow. So you got to start the ball rolling. There's no guarantee. Farmer puts a seed in the ground doesn't mean he's going to get a harvest, but if he doesn't put a seed in the ground, I guarantee you he won't get a harvest. So you have to start the ball rolling. As a result, it embraces communitarianism similar to our social media, where we're interconnected with one another. And it's what we call the extended nuclear family. Especially in this day and age when many of us don't have a nuclear family. We come from families with either one parent or the other, and so we make extended families around us, people who are just like brothers and sisters. Sometimes they're related to us like cousins, but other times they're people that have no bloodline to us, but they're just like brothers and sisters to us. So that's Ren, or benevolence. Once in a while you see Jen, but it's really Ren, so we'll use Ren. You'll see Ren on your quiz. Then there's Li, observing the rites, ritual and etiquette, doing the right thing in the right situation for the right reason. So when we talk about observing the rites, we're not talking about, well, I walked to school 10 miles in 3 feet of snow, you have to do it too. The rites, when they're valuable and they produce the right response, we continue to do them over and over again. So I suggest when you come to class, study, because study reproduces information that you can then recall when you need to come in and take your tests. If you don't study, tell me how well you do. Some people do well without studying. Most people do better when studying. So that's a ritual or a rite that's encouraged. It has to do with filial piety or loyalty. It involves the practice of kindness, honor, respect, and loyalty among family members. Again, it can go outside your blood family. Strong family is the basis of a strong society. Society ought to be one large family, ultimately extended to the whole human, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Traditional customs and rites provides a check to the subjectivity or egoism of the day. This is similar to, well, we'll get into the divine right of kings. This is where the repository of wisdom from the past is held. It must be appropriated as one's own. So what Confucius said about following the rites was you don't do it because everyone says we always did it, so you have to do it. You see a value in it, and so you incorporate it. So again, if you see a value in study, you study. If you see a value in hard work, you do that. If you see a value in respect, then you respect. Those are traditions. And they have to have a value that you can appropriate to yourself. You just don't do them blindly. And what Confucius said is when they're in good working order, society functions at its highest level of interconnectedness. Don't forget, everything in the East is interconnectedness. So when they function correctly for us and we see the value in them and we practice them and we share them and we pass them on to one another, that's what gives society the structure. It's built on benevolence, it's built on honor, it's built on understanding our need, that we function as a society because it produces peace rather than the chaos we've come out of. The third principle is what they call chow, or loyalty. It begins with the family. A strong family is the basis of a strong society, and society ought to be one large family, ultimately extended to the whole human community. So one of the examples that he uses is a lake. This is your nuclear family. This maybe is your aunts and your uncles. And then these are your cousins, and these are people a little more distant. And he says, this is where love begins. It begins with the family, where loyalty begins. Now, there are social reasons why we don't always do that, and we have to be honest. We have to acknowledge those. But where we can do that, he says, this is where love begins, and then it slowly spreads out through family relationships. Again, not just blood relationships, but what we call loyalty or filial relationships. Now, you know what that is because you have friendships and you're loyal to them. He says when that happens, then you have another family over here, you have another family over here, you have another family over here, and he is firmly believing that if love, based on these four principles, occurs, this circle overlaps, this circle overlaps, this circle overlaps, this circle, and so we multiply the possibility of love. Now, he's not talking about a mindless kind of love. This follows a certain benevolence, it follows a certain loyalty, a certain rights, and finally a certain morality or a certain kind of etiquette. And he says when we do that, we can literally transform society. Well, guess what happened? Confucianism reigned in China for over 2,000 years. Put away the warlordedness, not that they didn't have conflict, but for 2,000 years, Chinese society changed the way they related to one another. All because this itinerant teacher, what's itinerant mean? Itinerant means you don't have a place to teach, you're just on the foot all the time. This guy convinced enough people that if we just practice these four things, we can transform society. 2,000 years, he has transformed society. Question arises then, could we transform society here by following, if not these four principles, any principles? Didn't that just rub you the wrong way? A serious question. Would this ever work here? Why not? You're not rejecting it, I know. You're just saying it wouldn't work here.
It won't